Nate, thank you so much for joining the follow-up video series. We're going to talk today about how to best do follow-ups and, some common mistakes people will do. And so, Nate, we've done a lot of stuff together. I think a lot of the folks here probably recognize you, but for the folks who don't, Nate Wright is Inbox Attack. I'll hand it over to you to better do a more in-depth intro or overview of your background.
Thanks, Sujin. And I've been doing email marketing full-time for 9 years now. Before getting into that, I was a headhunter, which means I also sent a lot of emails.
Nice.
And before that, I worked in the Air Force as an officer, and I sent a lot of emails, but more in the learning how to navigate bureaucracies more than deliverability.
Nice. So we'll jump straight into the questions. First and foremost, do you have any rules or principles you follow when you send up follow-up emails?
First and foremost is you need to reread and reread and reread your follow-up emails and remove desperation. Desperation will not ever get you any points. So if it's not too much trouble, I want to apologize in advance for bothering you. If you've got the best Shinola in the market and they ignored your first email or weren't quite receptive in the beginning, if it's that good, then you're doing them the favor. So at least give them a chance to solve a problem or level something up in their life.
Love it. So that was actually my next question, is like, what are some phrases you would avoid using? So the desperation part is really, really important here. I think every single one of the follow-ups I've read from a customer has been a customer review has been like, I just wanted to do this. I am following up because. I think those, what do you think of those keywords? Are they like just, you don't need that, or what's your thoughts?
It's too self-centered. The use of the word I in general, you can't remove it completely without sounding disingenuous, but if you make it about them, like, this is how I want to make your day a little bit better. Some people can get away with doing it with humor, others with factoids. There's a lot of approaches, but ultimately it needs to add some value, even if it's just a chuckle to that person's day.
Fair enough. Yeah. I usually follow up with saying the being known as Sujin Patel wants to do this. That's horrible. Don't even speak in that tone. But okay, that's good. I think you've hit on two big points that I think I want to make sure everyone knows. Desperation, removing that from your follow-up emails and really your emails in general. And number two is the focus on I. I think what I'm hearing, and I've heard you speak about this many times, is that it's not about me, it's about you, the reader, right?
Yeah.
Are there any things you do? Is there anything you do or ways you supplement your follow-ups outside of email?
I still use the phone.
Nice. Okay.
I use the phone. I hate text messaging, but I had a tipping point where I had enough people. Just remind me via text. And guys, some of them older than me, like generationally, 10 years older than me, just text me. The guy in his 60s asked me to hit him up on WhatsApp. So I'm just like, really? But that's about them. It's about how do they want to communicate with you. If they're going to tell me how they want to be communicated with, that's the first step in them telling me how they want me to sell to them. So I need to listen to it. It doesn't mean I'm going to start my conversations that way, but continuing a conversation, if they are more comfortable in another medium, you got to move.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think the email is just the intro, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be the final form, right? It's really funny that I was talking to a friend of mine from Scaled. He's a CEO of Scaled. He's he specializes in his name is Jake. He specializes in building these sales organization and building sales into organizations. And he does a lot of enterprise sales and hires on teams for various companies, software specifically. And he was just like, how many phone calls do you get? I'm like, selling me something. I'm like, I get a couple. How many emails do you get? I'm like, a couple hundred. How many text messages do you get? One. Like, one ever, right? And so, look at the medium. I think it's really important. So that's a really great point, is that phone call, I think, has been deprioritized versus email, but it's still a viable channel. I love that. All right, let's move on. So in your email, in your follow-up, we talked about the things not to include, not to make it about you, make it about the reader. But what do you put in their emails? Like, is there any value add, or what's like the premise of this follow-up email?
It's a loaded question.
Okay.
Rule of thumb, you always want to, and this is an overused phrase, you always want to add value in each interaction. So one of the best cold emails I ever received was somebody trying to sell me something. And as a cold email expert, like I collect them like kids collect baseball cards, right? Is the follow-up email was like, oh man, sorry, Nate, I totally forgot to give you my cell phone number in that last email. Here it is. Totally automated. It was Growbots.
Nice.
And I was like, whoa, that is a really, really good follow-up, because he fooled me. Because I went and checked the headers on the nerdy stuff, and it was clear that it was automated. But I was like, man, that was good. So what he had done there is he had held back a little value in the first cold email, so it allowed him the opportunity to use that tactic. So sometimes it's holding back. You could give them the number 2, number 3, and number 4 best things about your product or your service to try to convince them to schedule the call or to hit reply. But if you hold back that number 1 and use it in email 2, or the one that's wacky, that's helpful, because it's like, oh, wait a minute, I forgot last time to send you this. Now, you can't overuse that tactic, but it is one that I keep in rotation.
I love it. I think phone number is great. I've personally experienced lots. My follow-up emails that have worked the best are, I follow up with the ebook. I'm a marketer by trade, right? So I've got a lot of content, and I say the stuff I do in the first email, and then I actually send the example in the second email. And it just gets them reading something of value. So totally love that. It's leaving them wanting more. That's amazing. So last question. This is rapid fire interview. You've already dropped some knowledge bombs here. And it might be the same thing. What's the best follow-up email you received outside of that one you just sent me?
Ooh. The one I received actually wasn't automated. Or it may have been scraped together in a spreadsheet for like a custom segment follow-up. But someone, instead of saying, hey, did you read my last email, they actually offered to introduce me to someone.
Nice.
So I think they did it by industry. It's like, hey, do you know such and so? I'd be willing to do a warm intro. So if you had a well-segmented list that was segmented by industry and maybe sub-industry, you could actually, in small batches, probably automate part of that.
I love that. That is awesome. I think, it goes back to the sales principles of adding value to someone's lives, right? Like, some of the best people, somebody actually was trying to sell me outbound. I have a good friend of mine who runs Growth OK, Wilson Peng, and he's been trying to get me to hire his agency or shop to like do outbound. But he's, his fault. I'm not interested. I'm just not, because obviously I have run an outreach company. I can do it myself. He knows that, but he's just like, he's like, we can do it better or whatever. Right. Anyways, he keeps following up, and I'm like, this is awesome, because he's following up with like, hey, did you check this new GDPR rule out? Oh, check this out. Like, let me interview you on my podcast. I want to hear your thoughts on how you grew Mailshake. I'm like, that's interesting. Like, you're going to interview me, make me look good. And this is all part of his follow-up strategy. And guess what? It's all done through text. And like, I can ignore emails all day long. I get 100 PR pitches every day, and I ignore like 99.999 of them. Like, once in every like 1,000 emails, I'll respond to one. But I feel guilty ignoring a text. I'm like, I don't want to leave this guy hanging. And even if I didn't know him, I don't want to leave him hanging. But anyways, very, very awesome tip. Thank you for joining. Nate, where can people find you?
You can find me, Nate, at inboxattack.com.
Awesome. And again, like guys, Nate has been doing some great webinars with Mailshake. So check out those previous webinars. We'll link them here in the show notes. And Nate, thank you again. And uh, we will. I'm sure we'll see you again in some future Mailshake content.
I hope so. All right. Thanks, Sujin.